The rain was relentless, hammering the streets of Maplewood, New Jersey, as if the sky itself was furious at some hidden betrayal. I stood under the awning of a corner deli, my breath fogging in the chilly air, watching Elliot sprint through the downpour, his jacket flapping like a broken wing. He didn't see me yet, but my heart was already racing. Knowing the lie I'd been weaving for months was unraveling faster than I could control. My name is Alex, though he knew me as Lexi, the quiet, sensitive girl who cried at poetry readings and blushed at his touch. It wasn't all Ali, at least. Not at first. I'd always been soft-spoken, quick to feel the weight of the world. But when I met Elliot at the community college's open mic night, something shifted. He was a literature major, all passion and sharp edges, with a smile that could make you forget your own name. He saw me, really saw me, in a way no one else ever had. But what he saw was a version of me I'd crafted carefully, long hair tied back, a loose sweater to hide my frame, and a name I borrowed from a life I wasn't sure I could claim. I wasn't trying to deceive him. Not really. It started small, letting him assume I was a girl because it was easier than explaining the truth. I'd been questioning my gender for years, floating somewhere between the boy I was born as and the person I felt inside. But in Maplewood, a town where everyone knew your business, being trans or non-binary wasn't a conversation you just dropped into. So, I let the assumptions slide. I let Lexi slide. And when Elliot looked at me with those warm brown eyes, calling me beautiful, I leaned into it. I faked the sensitivity he loved because it made him stay. That night at the open mic, he read a poem about a boy who chased stars, and I swear it felt like he was reading my soul. Afterward, we talked until the cafe closed, sharing stories of broken homes and dreams too big for this town. He told me about his mom, who left when he was 10, and I told him about my dad, who never looked at me the same after I started wearing eyeliner. We bonded over the cracks in our lives, and I let myself believe I could be Lexi forever. But forever is a fragile thing. 3 months into our relationship, I was still hiding. We'd walk through the park, his arm around my shoulders, and I'd feel like the luckiest person alive until he'd say something like, "You're so different from other girls." And my stomach would twist. I wanted to tell him. I tried to tell him. But every time the words formed, fear choked them back. What if he didn't understand? What if he hated me? Tonight, though, the choice wasn't mine anymore. Earlier that day, my cousin Sarah, who'd known me since we were kids, had seen us at the diner. She didn't mean to outmesh, was just excited, calling out, "Alex, you didn't tell me you had a boyfriend," before clapping her hand over her mouth. Elliot's smile faltered, confusion flickering in his eyes. I laughed it off, said she was mistaken, but the damage was done. He'd been quiet all day, and now, as he ran toward me through the rain, I knew he'd been thinking. "Lexi," he called, his voice cutting through the storm. He stopped under the awning, water dripping from his hair, his chest heaving. "We need to talk." My heart sank. I nodded, pulling my jacket tighter, as if it could shield me from what was coming. "Okay," I said, my voice barely audible over the rain. He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "Sarah called you Alex. She said boyfriend. What's going on?" I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear into the storm and never face this moment. But I'd been running from myself for too long, and Elliot deserved the truth, even if it broke us. "I'm not who you think I am," I said, my voice shaking. "My name is Alex. I was born a boy." His face froze. A mix of shock and something I couldn't read: anger. Betrayal. He took a step back, and I felt the world tilt. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice low, almost drowned by the rain. I was scared, I admitted, tears burning my eyes. I didn't want to lose you. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Then he turned and walked back into the rain, leaving me alone under the awning. The weight of my lie heavier than the storm. The next morning, Maplewood felt like a ghost town. The streets too quiet after the storm. I hadn't slept, my mind replaying Elliot's retreating figure, the way his shoulders hunched as if my words had physically struck him. I sat on my apartment's fire escape, clutching a coffee mug, wondering if I'd just lost the one person who made me feel whole. I'd moved to Maplewood 2 years ago, after high school, hoping a fresh start would help me figure out who I was. Back in Philly, I'd been the kid who didn't fit, too soft for the boys, too strange for the girls. Here, I thought I could reinvent myself. I started presenting as Lexi, testing the waters, seeing if it felt right. It did. Sometimes. But other times, I missed the parts of Alex I'd buried: the kid who loved skateboarding, who laughed too loud, who didn't have to pretend. Elliot had been my anchor in this new life. He was the first person who didn't question my quirks, who loved the way I'd tear up at a sad movie or ramble about constellations. But now, as I stared at the gray sky, I wondered if I'd been fooling myself. Had he loved me, or the idea of Lexi he'd built in his head? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Sarah. I'm so sorry, Alex. I didn't mean to mess things up. Call me. I sighed, not ready to face her guilt or mine. Instead, I scrolled to Elliot's contact, my thumb hovering over his name. I wanted to explain, to beg him to understand. But what could I say? I'd lied about who I was. By noon, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I pulled on my hoodie and walked to the community college, where I knew Elliot had a poetry workshop. The campus was alive with students, their laughter a stark contrast to the knot in my chest. I found him outside the arts building, sitting on a bench, his notebook open but untouched. Elliot, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, his expression guarded. Alex, he said, testing the name like it was foreign. What are you doing here? I needed to see you, I said, sitting at the far end of the bench. I owe you an explanation. He closed his notebook, his jaw tight. You think? You let me believe you were someone else for months. How am I supposed to trust you now? His words stung, but they were fair. I didn't mean to lie, I said. It just happened. You saw me as Lexi, and I didn't correct you because I was afraid. I've never been good at being myself. Elliot's eyes softened, but only for a moment. You could have told me. I told you everything, me mom. My fears. All of it. And you kept this from me. I know, I said, my voice breaking. I was scared you'd leave. People here, they don't always get it. Being trans, or non-binary, or whatever I am, it's complicated. I didn't want to lose you before I figured it out. He leaned back, staring at the sky. I don't even know what to say. I feel like I don't know you anymore. You do, I said, desperate. You know me better than anyone. The way I feel about you, the things we've shared, that's all real. He didn't respond, just stood and walked away, leaving his notebook on the bench. I picked it up, my hands trembling. and saw a half-written poem titled Truth in Shadows. The words were raw, jagged, about a love built on fragile ground. I closed the notebook, my heart aching, knowing I'd inspired those lines for all the wrong reasons. That night, I went to the park where we'd had our first date. I sat on our bench, the one where he'd first kissed me under the stars. I didn't know if I was waiting for him or just chasing a memory, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd ruined something irreplaceable. Days turned into weeks, and Elliot's absence carved a hollow space in my life. I kept going to classes, working shifts at the bookstore, but everything felt muted, like the world had lost its color. I'd see him sometimes across the quad, in the library, but he'd look away, his eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. I tried to move on. I cut my hair shorter, started wearing clothes that felt more like a mix of Alex and Lexi. Jeans and a binder one day, a flowy shirt the next. I was trying to find a balance, to stop hiding from myself. But every step toward authenticity felt like a step away from Elliot. One night, I went to the open mic again, hoping to reclaim a piece of the place where we'd met. The cafe was packed, the air thick with coffee and nerves. I signed up to read, something I hadn't done since we started dating. When my turn came, I stepped to the mic, my hands shaking, and read a poem I'd written about masks, how we wear them to survive, how they suffocate us. The room was quiet when I finished, then erupted in applause. I looked up, and there he was, in the back, his eyes locked on mine. My heart stopped. He didn't clap, didn't smile, just watched me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. When the event ended, I found him outside, leaning against a street lamp. "That was about you, wasn't it?" he said, his voice soft but sharp. "The masks." I nodded, unable to lie anymore. "It's about all of us, I guess. But yeah, mostly me." He looked down, kicking at a pebble. "I've been trying to understand. I read some stuff online about being trans, about gender. It's a lot. But I keep thinking about you, about how you looked so scared that night in the rain." I was terrified. I said, "I still am. I didn't want to hurt you, Elliot. I just wanted to be someone you could love." He met my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of the old Elliot. "I did love you," he said. "Maybe I still do. But I need time. Alex, this isn't just about you being trans. It's about trust." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I get it. Take all the time you need. I hope you can forgive me someday." He didn't say anything, just gave me a small nod before walking away. I watched him go, feeling a strange mix of hope and heartbreak. For the first time, I felt like I'd been honest not just with him, but with myself. Back at my apartment, I started journaling, something I hadn't done in years. I wrote about the fear, the guilt, but also the freedom of finally saying my truth out loud. I didn't know if Elliot would ever come back, but I knew I couldn't keep living for someone else's version of me. Winter settled over Maplewood, blanketing the town in snow and silence. I kept busy, throwing myself into my studies and picking up extra shifts at the bookstore. But every time I passed our bench in the park or saw a poetry book on the shelf, Elliot's face flashed in my mind. I started attending a local LGBTQ+ support group, something I'd been too scared to do before. The first meeting was overwhelming, people sharing stories of rejection, acceptance, and everything in between. I didn't talk much, but listening felt like a lifeline. One night, A trans woman named Mia shared her story of coming out to her partner. "It's not about them accepting you right away," she said. "It's about giving them space to catch up to who you've always been." Her words stuck with me. I wanted to give Elliot that space, but I also wanted to fight for us. So, I started writing him letters not to send, just to process. I wrote about the first time he held my hand, how it felt like the world finally made sense. I wrote about my fear of losing him, my fear of losing myself. The letters piled up in a drawer, each one a piece of my heart I wasn't ready to let go. One evening, I was closing up the bookstore when the bell above the door jingled. I looked up, and there was Elliot, snow dusting his coat, his cheeks flushed from the cold. My breath caught. "Hey," he said, his voice tentative. "Can we talk?" I nodded, my hands fumbling with the keys. We sat in the empty store, surrounded by shelves of books, the silence heavy between us. "I've been thinking a lot," he started, his eyes on the floor. "About you. About us." I was angry at first. "You know, I felt like you tricked me." But then I realized, I never asked. I just assumed. And you let me because you were scared. That's on both of us. I swallowed hard, hope flickering in my chest. I should have told you sooner. I didn't know how to be me and keep you at the same time. He looked up, his eyes softer now. "I don't know if I'm ready to jump back in, Alex. But I miss you. I miss the way you made me feel. The way we could talk for hours. I want to try to understand. To know the real you." My heart leapt, but I kept my voice steady. "I'd like that. But I need you to know I'm still figuring myself out. I'm not always Lexi. But I'm not just Alex either. I'm somewhere in between." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Okay. Let's figure it out together." We didn't kiss or make promises that night. We just talked, like we used to, until the snow stopped falling outside. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a start. Spring came to Maplewood, and with it, a cautious hope. Elliot and I started meeting up again, coffee dates, walks in the park, small steps toward rebuilding what we'd lost. He asked questions, sometimes awkward, sometimes deep, about my gender, my past, my future. I answered as honestly as I could, even when it scared me. One afternoon, we sat by the river, watching the water glint in the sunlight. "What does it feel like?" he asked, tossing a pebble into the current. "Being you. I mean." I thought for a moment, searching for the right words. "It's like living in a house that's always under construction. Some days, I love the new walls I'm building. Other days, I miss the old ones. But I'm learning to love the mess." He smiled, a real smile, and reached for my hand. "I like the mess," he said. "It's honest." Those moments gave me courage, but they didn't erase the challenges. Maplewood wasn't always kind. Whispers followed me at the bookstore. And once, a customer called me a freak when I corrected them on my pronouns. Elliot was there, his jaw tight, but he didn't say anything. Later, he apologized, saying he froze, unsure how to defend me without making it worse. "It's okay," I told him, though it hurt. "I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to be," he said, his voice fierce. "I want to do better, Alex. For you." His words stayed with me, a reminder that love wasn't just about feelings, it was about showing up, even when it was hard. We started going to the support group together, sitting in the back, listening. Elliot didn't say much, but I could see him absorbing it all, piecing together the world I lived in. One night, after a group meeting, we walked home under a sky full of stars. "You're brave," he said suddenly. "Braver than I realized." I laughed, shaking my head. "I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm stumbling through this." "That's what makes it brave," he said, stopping to face me. "You keep going, even when it's hard." I admire that. For the first time in months, I felt seen not as Lexi, not as Alex, but as me. I leaned in, and he met me halfway, our lips brushing in a kiss that felt like a promise. Summer brought warmth, but also tension. Elliot and I were closer, but the world around us wasn't always on our side. At a town festival, a group of guys from the college recognized us and started whispering, their laughter sharp and cruel. Elliot's hand tightened in mine, but I pulled away, not wanting to draw more attention. "You okay?" he asked later, as we sat on my fire escape, the music from the festival drifting up to us. "No," I admitted. "I hate that I have to think about this stuff all the time. Who's watching? Who's judging? I just want to be with you without it being a statement." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I wish I could fix that. I wish I could make the world see you the way I do." His words were kind, but they couldn't erase the reality. I started noticing the way he hesitated sometimes, glancing around before taking my hand in public. It wasn't his fault Maplewood wasn't exactly progressive, but it made me wonder if he was ready for this. For me. One night, we went to a party at a friend's house. The music was loud, the air thick with beer and laughter. I was having fun, dancing with Elliot, until I overheard someone say, "That's the guy who was pretending to be a girl, right?" The room spun. I excused myself, slipping outside to breathe. Elliot found me on the porch, his face worried. "What happened?" "They know," I said, my voice shaking. "Everyone knows." He pulled me into a hug, his arm steady. "Let them talk. I'm here, Alex. I'm not going anywhere." But the whispers didn't stop. At the bookstore, at school, even at the support group, I felt eyes on me. I started pulling back, canceling plans with Elliot, afraid of dragging him into my mess. He noticed. "Of course. You're shutting me out," he said one evening, standing in my apartment. "I thought we were in this together. I don't want you to get hurt because of me," I said. "This town, these people theory not ready for us." "I don't care about them," he said, his voice rising. "I care about you. But you have to let me in. Alex, you can't keep running." I wanted to believe him, but fear was a powerful thing. That night, I lay awake, wondering if love was enough to bridge the gap between us and the world. By fall, things felt fragile again. Elliot and I were trying, but the weight of the town's judgment was wearing us down. I started therapy, something I'd resisted for years, and it helped me untangle the knots in my head. My therapist, Dr. Lee, was a kind woman who listened without judgment. She helped me see that my fear of losing Elliot was tied to my fear of losing myself. "You're allowed to be both," she said one session. "Alex and Lexi. Or neither. Or something new. But you have to let yourself be. Without apology." I took her words to heart, starting to embrace the fluidity of my identity. I wore what felt right. Used the pronouns that fit the day she/they. He/they. Sometimes just Alex. Elliot supported me, but I could see the strain. He was trying to keep up, but the world kept pushing back. One evening, we went to the open mic again. I read a new poem, one about rebuilding after a storm. The crowd was kind, but afterward, a guy from the college cornered us outside. "You're confusing everyone, man," he said, his voice slurred with alcohol. "Pick a side." Elliot stepped in front of me, his fists clenched. "Back off," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The guy laughed, but walked away. I grabbed Elliot's arm, my heart pounding. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said, his eyes fierce. "I'm not letting anyone hurt you." That moment shifted something in me. I realized Elliot wasn't just staying out of love, was choosing to fight for us, even when it was hard. We walked home together, his hand in mine, and for the first time, I felt like we could face the world together. But the world wasn't done testing us. A week later, my dad showed up at my apartment, unannounced. He'd heard about me and Elliot from a cousin, and he wasn't happy. "You're embarrassing the family," he said, his voice cold. "This isn't who you are." I stood my ground, my voice steady. "This is exactly who I am, and I'm not hiding anymore." He left without another word, but his rejection stung. Elliot was there, holding me as I cried, promising we'd get through this. A year after the night in the rain, Maplewood felt different, not perfect, but softer, like a wound starting to heal. Elliot and I were still together, navigating the mess of love and identity with more honesty than I ever thought possible. We'd learned to talk through the hard moments, to lean on each other when the world felt heavy. One evening, we went back to our bench in the park, the one where we'd first kissed. The leaves were turning again, a cycle starting anew. Elliot pulled out his notebook, the one I'd found that day on campus, and handed it to me. "I finished the poem," he said, his voice shy. "It's for you." I opened it, my hands trembling, and read. It was about a boy who chased stars, only to find they were already within him. It was about us, about love that bends but doesn't break, about truths that hurt but set you free. "Elliot," I whispered, tears in my eyes. "This is beautiful." "So are you," he said, pulling me close. "All of you. Alex, Lexi, whoever you are. I love you." I kissed him, my heart full, knowing that love wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up. Scars and all. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were building something real, something worth fighting for. The town still whispered, and some days, the weight of their eyes was too much. But we had our community, the support group, our friends, the people who saw us for who we were. I kept writing, kept reading at the open mic, kept carving out space for myself. And Elliot was there, every step of the way, learning with me, growing with me. As we sat there, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold, I realized something. I didn't need to fake anything anymore. Not my sensitivity, not my identity, not my love. I was enough, just as I was. And in Elliot's eyes, I saw the same truth reflected back. We'd both changed, both learned, both stumbled. But we'd found our way back to each other, not as the people we thought we had to be, but as the people we were meant to become.